Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bloodworth, and as you can see, today I'm going to be taking a look at Dungeons Delvers by Awful Good Games. This is an OSR RPG game written by David Guile and Melissa Fisher. It's also illustrated by the same two individuals. And I'm going to jump right into it and switch screens here so you can take a look at the book in full size. So here's the book. I purchased this on Drive-Thru RPG as part of my holiday gift buying, and so that was last month. And it is 191 pages of content. It is a soft cover and full color on the inside. Plus, I got the PDF along with it, so I believe it was about $18 for the soft cover in full color, and the PDF included as well. So it was certainly something that I wanted to get my hands on and take a look at, and that's what I'm going to do right now along with you. So here's the book, and as you can see, the style of the artwork I actually like quite a bit. It once again, it has that kind of cartoonish kids style to it, but still there's kind of a grittiness to it that's kind of in there, so it's not childish, even though it has that kind of cartoonish appeal to it. So it was originally written, or at least this is the red book version, so I'm pretty sure that this is a revised edition of the very first, and so it does have additional content to it. But this was written in 2015. Goes into a brief introduction. And that's really an introduction of the project itself, not the game itself. So how to play, as far as setting difficulty tasks, and that's how the system's core mechanic basically works. Is that you'll have a difficulty target that you'd have to meet, and then based on your character's attributes, you would roll to see if you meet that difficulty level. So an easy task would have a 5. And the way attributes work is your attributes are assigned either a D4, a D6, or a D8. And if you're rolling multiple dice, which you generally will be, if you have let's say a might score or strength of a D6. Well, if you're rolling 2D6 and you're doing something that has an easy difficulty based on a strength roll or a might roll, then you're rolling 2d6 and trying to get at least a 5. Even if it's average, 2d6 to try to roll an 8, the average is still playing into your favor, because you do round up. So if you're doing just the base roll instead of actually rolling, but you're taking the average score, which is one way to streamline the action instead of rolling dice, is to just give you that base of a 4 out of 6 on 2d6, and so you would get average scores or average tasks completed as well. Hard is an 11, very hard is a 14, nearly impossible is a 17, and legendary is a 20 and above, which you're really not going to be able to get without any real bonuses, and without even having additional dice in your dice pool to use from. So let's go into that core mechanic and just read this out to you. So once you know what you want to do, the GM will then tell you what stat and skill to use to make a dice pool or just a pool. If you think another stat or skill would work instead, ask if you can use them. The pool always starts with at least 2 dice. One comes from the most relevant stat, and the other comes from the most relevant skill. Some abilities and effects will add more dice to your pool. If like the Kobold race, the Fighter Slayer talent, and the Rogue Evasion talent. Once you've got your pool figured out, roll all of the dice. If your pool only has 2 dice, add up the results for your total. If you have more than 2 dice, choose the 2 highest to determine your total. All right, so you're not going to add up the additional dice, but you are going to take the best 2 results from the number of dice that you do have in the pool. Meeting or beating. So you obviously want to either meet or beat the difficulty that the task is set at. If you meet or beat it, you're successful. If you don't meet or beat it, you fail. There is a system where multiple characters can help try to accomplish the same task, in which case you would use you might take the skills of one and the attribute of another, and since they are working together, you would take the best of the 2 roles from them as well. And so it's one way that multiple characters can function on a similar task, and you would get the best possible outcome. Might not always succeed, but there's a higher chance of it succeeding in that case. And they give several examples. So here are the dice that you might have for your various attributes and such. So there's a D4, D6, a D8, a D10, and a D12. And let me just show you real quick. So here's the stats, and the stats are basically a D4 is poor, a D6 is average, a D8 is good. And the highest the stat can become is a D12, although you're not going to start out with a D12 as far as a starting character is concerned. You have to develop that over time by adding, at certain levels, adding an upgrade in the dice that you're using in that particular attribute. So the skills or attributes I should say, are might, agility, spirit, intellect, and charm. So this is basically your strength, your dexterity, your spirit is kind of like your willpower, your intellect is your intelligence, your charm is your charisma, and might, I'm assuming, also doubles as part of your constitutional bonus as well. So it is an OSR game in a sense that it does have some very basic and familiar attributes to it. Wounds, this is the amount of damage that you can take before being rendered unconscious. And then you'll go to page 119 for combat and page 129 for recovery to see how that works. There is speed, and this speed is primarily used for overland movement and during combat. So, sometimes it's based on, how far you move overland in long distance traveling and over a larger period of time. But it also affects your, turn-by-turn movement as well. Defense is a little bit unique in this game, or at least different than your average D&D game. And your defense is based on, you block based on your might, you dodge based on your agility, and you have willpower based on your spirit stat. And so you kind of have 3 different types of defenses that you're potentially using all the time. So in combat you might end up using those 3 stats during any particular combat encounter. So it's a little bit more nuanced than just strictly this is your armor class or this is your saving throw. You might choose to either block or dodge, or you're almost always going to use your willpower to defend against spells or conditions that might affect your spirit. There's talents and prerequisites and ranks for those talents. Creating a character. So Unlike many other OSR games, which go back to, a much more simple system of like D&D and having a small number of races to choose from or a small number of classes to choose from, Dungeons and Delvers actually has, a larger range of character races and classes that you can start out as. I believe it's 8 character races and probably close to a dozen classes. So here you have a character sheet, and as you can see, this is the color version. So this particular character has this is a Kobold Wizard level 1, a might of a D4, an agility of a D6, an intellect of a D8, a spirit of a D6, and a charm of a D4. And so this character is mostly going to rely on her intellect in order to do most of her skills. So she would roll 2d8s and then take the best of the 2 rolls, at least 2d8s, and get the best of the 2 rolls and then apply that to whatever target that she was looking to do. Her block defense is a 7, her dodge is a 6, and her willpower is a 7. So those are her defenses, and that's what she's looking to defend against. They don't have hit points here. What they have is wound points, and so she has 3 wound points. If you have a character that is, much tougher, they will have more wound points available to them. She's obviously not wearing any kind of armor. And they have basic equipment and such, and the spells that she is starting out with. Now, this is a level 1 character, so Magic Missile, Detect Magic, Abjurer, and Evoker. So I don't know what Abjurer is, but I know what the Evoker is and such. But for starting either cantrips or low-level spells to begin with, so possibly not as weak as a D&D first-level magic user. For her skills, Arcana, she has a D8 plus D8 intellect. So she's rolling 2d8 in order to cast an Arcana spell. Her perception is D6 and D6. Her search is a D6 and a D8. So that's taking a skill plus the attribute in order to get the best of those 2 rolls. And stealth is a D6 and a D6 based on agility and skill. So these are her skills. Arcana, Perception, Search, and Stealth. All right. So the races, and there's a number of races. There are Beast Folk. There are Cambions, which are kind of like, typically they're kind of small bat wings. They're kind of like half human, half demon type creatures. You have dwarves, elves, frogmen, humans, Isham, which is something obviously unique to here, kobolds. You have classes, barbarians. There's quite a few skills or traits for barbarians. You have bards. There's a little frogman bard. Clerics. Druids. Their talents. Fighters. Apparently a dwarf fighter. Their talents. Paladins. This must be a beast man or a beastling, or I forget what they actually call them already. A ranger, obviously an elf. Rangers' animal companions. a rogue, or thief, if you will. Variety of rogue talents, a sorcerer, a wizard, and it goes to skills and how to improve skills. You see there's really cool art. I really like this art style. Like I said, it's cartoonish, but not childish. That's the best way I can explain it. So here you have a variety of skills that characters can choose from. And it tells you the attribute that their default is set at. The equipment section, so the might, as you can see, if your character has a might of D4, their carry capacity is up to 140, then 170, 200, 230, and 260 pounds. Weapon damage is based on the type of weapon, so a one-handed weapon does 1 point of damage or 1 wound point. Two-handed weapons do 2 points. So a very, very simple system without having to roll and tally up dice. It's just a very simple, this category of weapon does 1 point, this category of weapon does 2 points. And same thing with the armor. So the effect of the armor is 1 point of protection, 2 points of protection, 3 points of protection. Shield adds +1 to your block defense. So not your overall armor class, but just your ability to block. So carrying a shield does not make you dodge better. Goes into mounts, so there's different mounts that your character can have. Again, quite a bit of art thrown in here. The fact that the writers of the book and then the writers and the artists or the illustrators are both the same, and so it allows them the ability to add a lot more art to the book than would normally be possible for an independent producer. Really, really cool artwork here. I kind of like the way that they have the skeleton in the background is simply black and white, and yet as you move into the foreground, it's color. So here's the monsters, their size and type, their attack, ranged attacks, if any, their defenses, their wound levels, their speed, their special movements, their treasure. And then it goes through some very, very common monsters that you would find or creatures that you might have to fight, like carnivorous plants or crocodiles here. There was a section where you can create your own. I'm not coming across that just yet. Let's see if I find it. Yeah, creating monsters. So the main thing you need to know about a monster is its attack, defense, and wounds. Though some monsters will have various special abilities, they help to differentiate them and mixing things up. So attacks and defense, wounds, and so on. Special abilities, so you can select different special abilities if you're creating a unique monster. And so it just gives you a little flexibility. If you don't see it in the book, you can always create it and think about, what traits and abilities might this creature that you're creating have. And then it goes into a treasure section. Character sheet at the back. And this is more of a reference. So like if you're creating a character or you have a 0 session, it tells you what page numbers each of the areas you have to turn to in the book in order to figure out where you're putting that information in. So this is more of a cheat sheet, which actually says character cheat sheet. And then you could print out the character sheet separately, and just keep them side by side to produce that. So let's get back over to the screen here. So looks like a pretty cool little game here. I always look forward to, reading through these, these RPGs and just getting a much better feel for the system. Hopefully play them, although a lot of times, I just read them. I don't have the opportunity to play every single, RPG that I actually have. I mean, as you can see, I'll switch screens. I mean, you can see behind me here is my bookshelf, and there is got to be at least probably about at least 40 or 50, between 40 and 50 different RPGs behind me in there. And I'm quite a bit of a collector of these smaller independent OSR games. So once again, thanks for joining. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Certainly share it if you know anybody who might like to take a look at this little RPG. I know that they have they have a second edition possibly in the works for this, which may or may not come out this year. But that was one conversation I was having with Melissa Guile on Facebook. She was mentioning that they're actually kind of working on a second edition of this. But in the meantime, I certainly recommend grabbing a copy of the Red Book and giving the game a try. It looks like it'll be a lot of fun, and very simple system. So easy as far as getting into starting a game session with people who have never played RPGs before. It's a good game to introduce new players to. So thanks for joining. I look forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime soon. You'll have a great remainder of the weekend, and if you do have off tomorrow, enjoy your day off tomorrow as well. And I look forward to seeing you sometime on the gaming screen sometime soon. All right, you'll have a great afternoon.